Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Sunday, and I waited for all the weather models to come in so that we can kind of look at everything and come to our inevitable conclusions. I'm not changing anything in terms of my forecast from what I've seen today. It seems like every model has had a hiccup along the way, and and today's turn, the Canadian model had a little bit of a hiccup, and I say a hiccup, it's minor. The bottom line is that the models are just kind of getting very, very close to what the track is going to be, and there's going to be 1 foot plus snows for a very large geographic area. There'll be a few places where we're going to need to fine tune a little bit, but let me just go over with you what's going on in terms of the blizzard watches that are up. So they extend from much of from southeastern Massachusetts on over through all of southern Rhode Island, south coastal Connecticut, back to New York City, and over Long Island. And with respect to the winter storm watches, that covers a very large geographic area that pretty much takes care of all of New England. You can see the map is loading here, but virtually all of New England, all of New Jersey except for Cape May County, most of Pennsylvania except for the Southwest, and they've kind of expanded it back a little further west. Also, the southern flank of this was expanded a bit into Maryland, a little more into southern Maryland, and also back up into northeastern Virginia. So you've got this pretty large area that's going to expect some very heavy snows. And as far as what my accumulation forecast map, which I put out a couple of days ago, I have not changed it in the least. I'm not a rocket scientist. I can't. I can't fine tune things well in terms of what spots are going to get the most and what aren't, particularly because of the fact that you've got every model keying on a different area. So some models want to have heavy snows, have some big amounts in southeastern Pennsylvania and southwest New Jersey. Others want to have it in northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, and on up into parts of the Hudson Valley. Others are more uniform. Some have, and I'll show it to you, some have heavy snow down to the southwest and heavy snow to the northeast of a foot or more, and a little bit less for some reason, a snow hole right in between. So you know what? This risk area for 1 foot or more holds. I may want to expand it back a little further northwest where I have the 8 to 12 line and make the 8 to 12, back behind this over toward Williamsport State College, and that this will be also included in the foot or more. Still feel pretty good about the fact that it's going to be less, with some rain issues in southern coastal New Jersey from Ocean County southward. So I went for a graduated decrease from 8 to 12 to 4 to 8. But, again, that's going to require some very short range fine tuning on a forecaster's part. Now, here's the we'll call it a hiccup run, only because of the fact that the Canadian surface low is it's tucked in a little further west than all the models by about 30 or 40 miles. And, the other thing with the Canadian is that even though it tucks in the low, it is bringing some rain issues to northern New Jersey, to Sandy Hook, and to the south shore of Long Island, but it still keeps a good chunk of Long Island is mostly snow. And, of course, everybody else is all snow as you go north and west. So this is if the Canadian is even correct on this. So we have the Canadian, and I'll draw some various tracks, and then we'll go look at the maps themselves. But we've got the Canadian model, which is tracking, basically from here to about Montauk to, something like this. Okay, so that's our Canadian model. The NAM today actually caved and went further east. The NAM is more like this, okay, and the European model that the new European, which I just looked at, and hopefully the yellow shows up okay, kind of corresponds to the NAM model, okay, so that's about like that. And the GFS is fairly fairly close, same idea. Just south of Nantucket to Cape Cod. So they're all reasonably close. And I think, one of the things that happens, by the way, with these deep surface lows, as they get more intense, the actual column of the cold air displaces southeastward. So in fact, the rain snow line could actually wind up being 30 or 40 miles further south than what the model is showing because of the intense nature of the surface low. Everything gets drawn closer to the center. Everything gets sort of coiled up in there. So it's not exactly vertical. The cold air is actually more stacked at a bit of an angle. So you know what? That's to me, that's kind of like that's sort of trying to get really real super fine tuning, and that's very, very hard to do. So let's look around. Let's take a look first. We'll go to the NAM today. And all the variations of the NAM today have a bit of more of an offshore track. And you can see the NAM actually has it, from Hatteras, keeps it all offshore, keeps most of the area in all snow, including Long Island. The low passes southeast of Montauk, over Nantucket and Cape Cod, and into the Gulf of Maine. So, that's a mostly snow scenario, and it supports my forecast of 12 plus. And, we'll go to the GFS, and the GFS, as we back it up, just west of Hatteras, moves northeast right through. I made reference to this earlier today. There's that something that an old professor of mine, Professor Spar, came up with, and it was called the box. Okay, and the box is roughly something like this. Okay, and it was a box area that if you plotted storms in terms of their track, the ones that moved through the box were storms that all basically produced 6-inch or greater snowfalls for the New York City metro area. And this one follows the line of going. They all have a track that eventually takes it right through the box. So this is pretty much a locked-in story here. Again, just trying to figure out what the total snow amounts are more. But you see the GFS's track is offshore. I got to widen out to get the proper European track so we can take a look at that. And we're only going to see in between 24-hour time frames. But I looked at the individual 6-hour increments of the European model, and we'll let me punch it up. Okay, let's bring it here. There we go. European. Okay, so there's the surface low east of the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, and then it runs up to off the coast of Maine. And it really pretty much tracks in a straight line there. So it takes it far enough offshore where the bulk of the precipitation is snow, and the European snow maps produce 1 foot plus snows for Long Island, for New Jersey, basically along and north of Route 195, north and west. And it actually produces some 18 to 24-inch amounts in northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, into the Hudson Valley. But I would caution that the European tends to beef up the northwest side too much and not enough on the areas that are closer to the low center. So again, this to me says you forecast for a foot plus, and I think everybody gets the idea that somebody could wind up with much more. So let's look at the upper air. We'll start with the European, because all along, the biggest issue here was the fact that you had these two streams of energy and whether they would stay phased or unphased. And, the European pretty much has, here's that northern energy. And let me just get out of the box mode here and draw the hand. And we'll get the troughs in red. So, here's the southern stream system, and here's the northern stream system up and coming down. So they really don't get phased together until the trough position is far enough east where there's a limited impact with warm air coming in from off the ocean as far as rain is concerned. And I think that's really where this is all going. The Canadian today has, they're not quite phased, but that northern energy trough here is a little bit closer. It looks like it wants to try and phase them together. It could be a timing issue with regards to the speed of this the southern stream system, that the Canadian wants to, bring these two streams closer together, that might account for the slight westward shift. The GFS, when we look at the GFS on the upper air, again, you have the GFS, which was wanting to phase this for quite a while, has gone more unphased than all the models now, and that's what you can see the differences to where the trough axes are, and on the NAM we have the same, again, same kind. Here's your trough on the NAM, and here's your southern stream a little bit more separate. So I think that's where we're at here, folks. So this is not going to phase in time to bring in a coast hugger all the way up. The streams should stay separate just far enough that it maintains an offshore track, and that will be mostly snow for everybody. And you know what? Even if it does change in some coastal areas from central and northern New Jersey to parts of Long Island, my experience has been in those cases that when it changes back to snow, which it will do if it were to do that, the accumulations will be made up on the backside anyway, so it winds up working out just about even. I'm really not too concerned about this. Here's the GFS overall track on the wide view. Now, in terms of timing, look for snow to develop in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area tomorrow, probably a little bit before around sunset or so, and maybe in the late evening around Philadelphia, South Central PA, probably, and then coming into the New York City metro area between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., I'm guessing. And the snow's going to go from, a few flakes to moderate snow in a very short period of time. So you're going to start putting down accumulations in a hurry, and then it snows hard through tomorrow afternoon. And rate of accumulation I would think would be at least 1 to 2 inches an hour in most places will mitigate completely, I think, sun angle issues. That plus the fact that for most of the area, temperatures through all of this are going to be in the 20s, and just inland of the coast, they may very well even be in the low 20s. So this is all going to accumulate, and the snow may be more powdery than anything else, except perhaps right near the immediate coast. And then the low moves out to the northeast, so the snows begin tapering off and ending during the afternoon in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and then by 7 or 8 o'clock, it's just about done around the New York City area, and by 1 a.m., it's done in Boston. There's the upper low is dropping southeastward, and that creates another surface low here off the Carolina coast. We see this happen from time to time, and that brings some snow to areas like Virginia, eastern North Carolina, and the southern Delmarva Peninsula. But that's probably the area that will get it from this, and it's not something that's going to lift up northward. Plus, we still have this advection of cold air that's going to go all the way down into Florida. So if you're vacationing in Florida this week, particularly when we get into Wednesday and Thursday and into Friday morning, you're going to have a few cold mornings. In northern Florida, we'll probably see temperatures down near or below freezing with some frost and freeze issues there. So this is one rather impressive system coming in to the northeast. So we will, of course, continue to monitor the situation. I don't expect warnings to go up now. I think it's probably too early, but more than likely they'll probably go up tomorrow morning for the Tuesday time frame, or certainly by midday. I would think the Weather Service will throw the warnings up. I'm anticipating that they'll go to a blizzard warning for Long Island. I don't see anything in the afternoon model runs that would suggest otherwise. I want to pull up the RGEM model, because that model is usually pretty good inside the short range, and it is a Canadian model. So if the longer range is doing with that sort of tucked in look to the west, the RGEM model is actually more in line with the GFS European, which is a little further offshore. And you can see, the low is east of Salisbury. It's not that tucked in. And notice it's snowing very hard here. This is at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry, this is at 7 o'clock in the morning. It brings snow in faster, and it's snowing very hard at this point across Long Island and northern New Jersey, even south of 195. The rain snow line is still south of there. It looks like it's on the Ocean County, Monmouth County line with this. And, that says to me that, if you're snowing 2 inches an hour and you snow for 6 or 7 hours, you're going to put your foot down pretty quick. Even if you wind up in coastal areas going over to some mix or some rain for a while. To me, this for most of this area from Virginia on up through New England, this is an all snow event of a foot plus, and we will just let the snowflakes fall where they may. All right, so we'll leave it at that for now. I know a few people were asking about the long range. So you know what? I'm going to look at it with you for the first time. We'll go to the GFS and see what it's up to, because that's out far enough. Now that we're on daylight saving time, the models are out an hour later. So that makes it a little tougher for me to update with a new GFS when I cut a noontime video. But I'm going to do the best I can to do that before I head off to my regular job at FiOS 1 News, which covers Long Island, New Jersey, and Hudson Valley. If you're in my area, if you live in those areas in in the Northeast, in New Jersey, southeastern New York, and Long Island. So here's that low pulling out. We've got more energy coming into the Pacific Northwest. Looks like something on the GFS tries to drop southeastward and kind of makes a little low there next weekend off the East Coast. But one of the things that I have a problem with is the fact that I can only look at one thing at a time. And when I start to see multiple systems, I'm not going to wrap my head around this very much until this first one is done. Looks like another cold front comes through on the 21st with some cold air from Canada coming in, and then another system later next week. Next week. So we're going out to March 23rd, 24th that heads to the lakes, if you want to believe it, that is far ahead. Why don't we just look at the upper air, because at least we can get some idea of what the, if there is or isn't going to be any blocking. Because remember, blocking set all this off to begin with. So it shows you how important it can be if the troughs line up in the right spot. But here we have, it doesn't look overly blocky. Let me just back it up. You can see what's going on now. So here's our block from this was going back to Friday. That block starts to break down somewhat, as this next trough digs down. And there you see it. This is for Monday into Tuesday. You still have some semblance of blocking action, but the fact that it progresses along, so that lifts out. And then you have this sort of weak ridge that builds in with another weak trough. So there's a tendency for troughs to want to come down into the east here. We're not showing a whole lot of, we're not really seeing a big blocking signature going forward after this system goes on by. But you know what? We're going to reevaluate that. I need time to really look at this deeply in order to come to some real conclusions regarding what the long range is going to do. And I think I'm not going to be able to do that for until this first storm is over. I don't think anyone can blame me for that, laying off on it. It requires a lot of time and looking at a lot of different elements of the atmosphere over a huge area. And I just don't have it in me at the moment. Okay, so meteorologistjoechaffee.com. You can get all the latest on what the weather models are doing, where the watches are up, latest weather conditions for much of the area from southeastern Pennsylvania through southern New England, including Philadelphia and New York City. Angry Ben on NYCweathernow.com covers New York City weather and right along the immediate vicinity. So he has his views on how he sees things, and they are lining up pretty well with me. And Angry Ben is a real separate person. It's not some sort of alter ego. I'm Joe Stradamus, and he's Angry Ben. It's my friend Ben Scott, and he does a really fantastic job for NYCweathernow.com. Long Island, go to weatherlongisland.com. I haven't had a chance to update that website, but I will be doing that later today with what I think is going to happen specifically for Long Island. And of course, you can get specific forecasts for New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Hudson Valley, and Eastern Pennsylvania on my weather app, which the links are on to that are on my website. You can go that way. There's a card that always shows up near the top, and you can link from that It's a free app download, and it's just 99 cents a month for forecasts for those particular zones. So you can have me for less than a cup of coffee, and that's pretty cheap. Okay, so everybody have a great rest of your Sunday. Try and stay warm in these really cold conditions with temperatures barely back to 30 degrees, and in some cases not out of the 20s today. And we will continue to keep you updated on all the latest developments regarding this major mid-March snowstorm. Who would have thought it?